Welcome and Vanakkam, Swagatham, good wishes to everyone. In this video, I propose to reflect together with all of you on a theme that may be broadly phrased as religion and the human condition. Religion and the human condition. In order to identify or provide for ourselves a starting point, let me read a verse from the Bible, the very first book of the Bible, which is Genesis, 2nd chapter, verse 7. Then the Lord God formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living creature. Even though I choose a biblical text as a sort of overall guiding light for our reflection, the substance of video is universal in nature, therefore, irrespective of religious differences, anybody can benefit from this, because what I am going to say will have no religious implication, and what is universal cannot be religious, and what is religious cannot be universal. What is spiritual is necessarily universal, and that's a distinction that I request all of us to keep in mind. Now, this particular passage has fascinated me, haunted me for a long period of time. I've been trying to intuit its meaning. I've read many interpretations of this, but none of them really satisfied me. I knew that there was something far more relevant to the human predicament than is usually attributed as meaning to this text. So I'm now trying to share with you what I have understood as a result of a long period of reflection, analysis, and thinking. Why does the Bible describe the creation of human beings, creation of man in the generic sense, which also includes woman, in this sense, in this manner? Two completely incompatible elements, the dust of the earth on the one hand and the breath of God on the other. I don't have to argue that these are as contrary to each other, as different to each other as any two elements can be. And yet the two become one, and that becomes the secret of life. So first, God shapes Adam out of the dust of the earth. Even though he is shaped beautifully, there is one lacuna, something is missing, and that is there is no life in him. In order to make up for that lacuna or deficiency, God breathes his breath into Adam and he becomes a living soul. So this is the description. What does it mean? It means that to be human is to live a very challenging contradiction, or it may not be contradiction, is to have to live with an unending tension. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. Between the material medium that we are and the more than material medium that we have to be, there is an unending, unresolvable tension. It is that tension which constitutes the essence of being human. Though many people think that to be human is to live in peace, to live free from want, to live in total freedom, so on and so forth. We have all kinds of assumptions about what it means to be human. But going by this passage, this very significant revelation made at the very beginning of the Bible, I'm pretty convinced that to be human is to live this tension this creational tension which is embedded in the very logic of our creation, creational tension, on account of our having been fashioned out of the dust of the earth, the material medium, and then God breathing His breath into us, which is the more than material medium. So we are at once material and more than material. Now, this is both a blessing and a burden. Blessing in the sense that this constitutes the uniqueness of our creation as compared to all other forms of life, all other forms of animal life. There is no point in comparing ourselves with inanimate objects. So, man, even though he belongs to the animal kingdom, is quite distinguished from the whole of the animal kingdom with a uniqueness that is unmatched and unmatchable. And this particular text becomes an explanation, a very interesting explanation for that uniqueness. Animals do not have that kind of tension, or this kind of tension is not embedded in the very being of animals. Now, what are the practical consequences of this? And that is what we need to understand as clearly as we can, though I have to admit that I don't have the ability to explain these things as transparently, as simply and intelligibly as they need to be, but I shall try and do my best. What are the implications of this very unique mode of existence given to us? One implication surely is that we can never be satisfied with the material dimension of our being, no matter how elaborate, how glorious, how grand and magnificent all these circumstances are. No matter how great our achievements are in the worldly sense, in the material sense, we will still remain discontented, unhappy, unfulfilled, inwardly empty and disquieted. There will be in us a thirst for something more than all the material, physical, empirical achievements put together, no matter how grand they are. Even the greatest of conquerors would not be an exception to this. Not even those who hold the highest offices, the most powerful offices in the world today, for example, the President of the United States of America, cannot be exempted, cannot be different to this rule, that there is a gaping inner vacuum, a disquieting inner vacuum, even as one sits on the pinnacle of worldly achievements. So there is this reality about which we need to do something. Secondly, there is a necessary tension between the material, empirical, earthly condition in which we are and who we really are. Between the human being and his context, there will always be a tension. And it is this tension that drives human beings to impact their context, their environments, in order to improve them, and if they can't be improved, in order to transcend them. To take one example to illustrate this, human beings cannot improve their speed in movement, no matter how athletic they are and how much they perfect their athleticism, beyond a certain limit. Maybe a person, if he is a perfect athlete, will be able to run fast enough to cover, say, 60 kilometers per hour, which is a speed that human beings cannot maintain for more than 200 meters or 300 or maximum 400 meters, beyond which nobody can. If you try, you'll die. But a horse can maintain that speed for a much longer distance. Now, therefore, there is a limit that is reached, and that limit cannot be transcended. You can push your material limit up to a point. For example, if you can run only at the rate of 200 kilometers per hour, through constant training by improving your athletic skills, you'll be able to push it to 40, 50, maybe at the highest levels, 60 kilometers per hour. But beyond with that, you can't go. Then what do? You transcend your human condition. How do you do that? You resort to science. So you invent automobiles, you invent aircrafts, and they can travel much faster. They can help you move much faster, a speed which no animal can attain. No animal can match the speed even of a motor car. The fastest animal, which is the cheetah, cannot match the speed of an ordinary motor car, not to say anything about an aircraft. So human beings can transcend their condition, their limitations. And if you examine the ancient myths, you have this human desire to attempt to transcend this. And one of the stories is the story of Icarus in Greek mythology, who, in order to fly, fitted himself with wings, but those wings were waxen wings, and therefore, as he flew higher and higher and he reached nearer the sun, so the myth goes, his wings melted and he crashed and he died. That is to say, there is a mythological intuition that going beyond a certain limit will certainly attract very calamitous, disastrous consequences. And that awareness also is reflected in the Bible in the form of the forbidden fruit. With respect to knowledge, it's dangerous to go beyond a certain point. And also this applies to our relationship to nature with respect to the garden, which symbolizes nature, which is our material home. Don't cross beyond this limit. So our earthly life presupposes very firmly fixed limits. And at the same time, the very essence of our being rebels against it. If we were compacted entirely of the dust of the earth and the divine breath was not in us, this would not have been a problem. We would have lived like animals. You don't see animals trying to outreach themselves. You don't see animals trying to perfect their athleticism. You don't find animals inventing machines that would take them much faster from one place to another, or invent tools and means by which other animals can be more readily hunted, like a hunting gun or whatever. They stay with what they are given by nature, and nothing will happen, no change will happen for centuries, for millennia. Even though Darwin evolved the idea of evolution, we still haven't seen a lion that hunts with guns and all the rest of it. So this is one area. Human beings have a need to transcend the given because of this unique nature that's embedded in our creation itself. It's nothing accidental. This is an integral and irreducible part of our being. We cannot be human if we are not like this. This tension between where we are and what we are, and where we would like to be, what we would like to become, is the very essence of being human. And this particular impulse to transcend the given finds various expressions. For example, art. What does the artist do? He accepts materials from nature, and with the help of these material things, he transcends nature. When the artist paints a scene, he is immortalizing it. That particular scene in nature may die out, but the artist's version of that particular scene will remain for centuries. So, in one sense, art is the affirmation of the principle of immortality within the context of mortality. The other aspect of art is that it is a domain of wish fulfillment. Now, human beings know that they are placed in a context which is imperfect. After all, it was because the dust of the earth was imperfect, vis-a-vis life, that God, after shaping Adam out of the dust of the earth, had to breathe into Adam's nostril. If the dust of the earth, which symbolizes all material resources, was self-sufficient, then God did not have to invest his breath into the creation of Adam. So, human beings are embedded, are situated in a context of insufficiency. In other words, the context in which we find ourselves, no matter who we are, our very circumstances and stations in life, will always serve as medium of frustration. Believe you me, every human being on planet Earth is living in frustration, varying degrees of frustration. It can vary from individual to individual, but there is no human being on planet Earth who is completely free from frustrations, and that goes even for living saints. If you have read the biographies of some of the saints, you realize that the tension that they lived much of their life through, the tension between their context, their human condition, and their inner spiritual aspiration. And art provides to human beings a means whereby this tension can be transcended for the time being. There is no permanent solution to that tension. While you are engaging with that form of art, you feel liberated from, you feel lifted out of these limiting material conditions. Now, this becomes very evident in the form of cinema as an art form, or theatre as an art form, or even music as an art form. Because if you're sitting in an auditorium, listening to a very good recital of a classical raga, then you forget the whole world, you're in another world altogether. So, good art has the power to lift you out of these limiting, frustrating, disquieting material circumstances, but again, only in a transitory, fleeting fashion. After the recital is over, after the dance performance is over, after the curtain comes down, you're back in the world of unpleasant realities. So, there is no permanent solution there, whereas the domain of science can offer more permanent solutions to the particular limitation. For example, if there is an epidemic, scientists can evolve vaccination which can protect you from the infection for a period of time. And maybe next year another virus will come and again you are vulnerable. The scientists will give you some other kind of vaccination. So, these human beings move through history with the help of these temporary transitory solutions. There is no permanent remedy in the material realm. We can only move from one stage of safety, competence, sufficiency to another. And each degree of sufficiency also is another degree of insufficiency. Each level of satisfaction is merely the stepping stone to another level of dissatisfaction, and then you try to meet that dissatisfaction by creating something better. That's how humanity progresses, that's how culture develops, science progresses, so on and so forth. So now when you think of the theatre or cinema as an art form, what happens? Why do people go to the theatre? Why do people go and see cinema, films in a cinema hall? For the very reason that when you are watching a play or a film, you are liberated from the particular stations, particular context of your life, and you find on the silver screen or you find on the stage individuals who are like you but quite unlike you because they are living their life in a wonderful manner. Now, what you cannot be, even if you try your level best, a character can be on the stage. A character can be a king, which you can never be. A character can suddenly become a great novelist or a poet or the greatest of orators. Or a character can become the mightiest warrior of the earth the history has ever seen. A character can become a mighty titan. All because of play acting. Not that that's the reality, but the theatre is distinguished by what Samuel Taylor Coleridge calls the willing suspension of disbelief, which constitutes poetic faith. So, as you enter the theatre, you are entering into an act of faith. You agree that you will deposit your faith, you invest your faith in whatever happens on the stage. Even if it is pure make-believe, it has nothing to do with reality, but you enter into an agreement that you will invest your faith. And while the play is on, while the drama is being acted out, you 100% without the slightest element of doubt believe that everything that happens on stage is absolutely real. Without that, you can't enjoy the play. This is even more so in the case of cinema. So, the attraction of cinema is that it gives to people a temporary relief for about maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours, relief from this tension which characterizes the human condition, tension between who we are and what our circumstances are like, which we cannot resolve in actual life. Therefore, it has to be resolved at least for a short period of time at the imaginative level. So, you present a picture of life, a context where the story happens in this manner, and you vicariously participate in it and you feel a sense of relief and you come back to life and it is business as usual. And again, the next time you go to the theatre and it goes on like that. Now, there is another area where this tension is sought to be relieved. And when I mention this, you'll be perhaps shocked. And that area is religion. I'm pretty sure that there would have been no religion on planet Earth but for this tension between the material dimensions of our life and the more than material dimensions of our being, or between our body and our soul. If we were only the body, if our life comprised only this body, then there would have been no religion. Because we are more than the physical dimension that we can see and touch, etc., and that dimension is perhaps even more important than the physical dimension, we experience this tension between the merely physical and the more than physical, which Jesus so beautifully refers to in the first temptation and says, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Why is it that man cannot live by bread alone? Because we are certainly much more than this body that we see. If we were only the body, we could have lived by bread alone. Therefore, if anyone leads a life wherein bread is more than adequate, the clear meaning is that life is subhuman and it has to be clearly understood. So, the idea of the Word of God, the purpose of the Word of God is to nurture that more than physical dimension of our being and our personality. And the Word of God has to be related to, interpreted, made available to people in that light. Unfortunately, it is not being done. So, what happens in religion is, religion tries to religion gets people to believe that there is a way for each one of you to resolve this tension, this disquietude that you're experiencing, the disquietude that you are living with all your life, on account of the tension between the physical dimension and the more than physical dimension of your life, where you have immortal aspirations embedded in the material form, which is your body, the flesh, which the flesh cannot fulfill no matter what it does and how hard it tries. Something else has to be brought into it. So religion comes to your rescue and says, well, don't you worry, don't despair, there is a way. And that way is to repose your faith in certain divine engagements with the human predicament, the divine interventions. If you think of life in the horizontal plane, the divine is the vertical incidence of the divine on the horizontal plane of life. That's how it happens. So on the horizontal plane, you have no hope. Life will continue like this. But there is hope because there is a possibility of something more than the material, more than the human, coming and impacting this, whatever happens on the material level, giving it an entirely different scope, possibility, and vitality. And on that plane, the various limitations to which human beings are subjected can be mitigated. The limitations to which human beings are subjected are of two kinds. One is limitations pertaining to time. For example, we cannot jump 2 days and live the third day from now. We cannot go back in time and live, say, last year. We can have memory of how we lived last year, but we can't go back to last year and live there. We cannot escape death, which is a function of time. So that's one set of limitations. The other set of limitations that we suffer from is limitations relating to space. We cannot be here and there at the same time. I cannot be in Kerala and in Delhi at the same time. God can be, because God is everywhere. That's why God is believed to be omnipresent. So human life is seriously limited in terms of a whole host of limitations pertaining to two categories, namely limitations on account of time and limitations on account of space. Religion comes and tells you that these limitations can actually be transcended, because this is the way humanity can be hitched to divinity. And if you align yourself to God, then these material limitations will not bother you. All right, then you say, well, even if I'm a believer, my life is still subjected to all these limitations. Well, Jesus Christ walked on water, I cannot walk on water. Jesus Christ turned water into wine. No matter how hard I try, not a drop of water will turn into wine. Jesus Christ healed X, Y, and Z. No matter how hard I try, I won't be able to heal myself. So then religion says, don't you worry. There is somebody who has the power to do it. You believe in him. But then this experience is not a matter of 100% certainty. Therefore, these possibilities are placed at the level of faith. There are only two possibilities. One is faith and the other is guarantee. Now, these days, politicians go around giving guarantees. Modi ki guarantee, Arvind Kejriwal ki guarantee. Everybody is giving guarantee. No guarantee can be given. Anybody who thinks that anybody can be guaranteed on planet Earth does not know the logic of life. And people who believe in it are also very naive. So be a little more careful. There is no guarantee about life. And anyone who knows the basics about life will tell you that life affords no guarantees. Because life is lived on, and life is situated on faith, it has to be lived on faith. Faith is exactly the opposite of guarantee. So, uh, faith will enable you to rise above, but not according to your likes and dislikes, but according to a principle that works above you, to rise above your limitations. When it happens, how it happens, and all, it's not for you to decide. You have to cast yourself at the providence of God. And if you have faith in God, these things will happen to you, about which you have no control. But there is an assurance given to you that if you relate in faith, faith in Jesus Christ, and through Jesus Christ to God the Father, then these things can happen. The limitations of your life on earth can be up to a point mitigated, transcended, or reduced. But there is another promise that religion makes. And that's the most important thing, though, in my opinion, that should not be the most important thing. And that is, well, while you live on this earth, you're subject to all its limitations of time and space. You have to be like anybody else. You may be a believer, but that doesn't mean that you're entitled to some very special privileges and exemption from the conditions and limitations that others suffer from. And expecting or insisting that you should be so is very selfish, and that proves that you're ungodly and you have no faith. So what do you do now? You project all these extravagant desires, expectations, and demands onto the life to come. But that's the heart of religion, unfortunately. Though, if you look at the life and teachings of Jesus Christ, it is not so. In his day, the priestly class of the times tried to focus people's attention on the world to come, the distant, indeterminate other world. But Jesus, in complete contrast to all that was being advocated, tried his level best to refocus the attention of the people on life here and now. And therefore, you find very little teaching in Jesus Christ regarding the world to come. All the time he is concerned about how people can be enabled to have life in all its fullness here upon planet Earth. And I think that's the right emphasis in spirituality, whereas religion all the time deflects your attention from your life upon this earth, the many wonderful possibilities in it, the great resources God has already entrusted to you, which if you develop, you can actually do miraculous things. It leads you into an alternate mindset of projecting all your expectations onto a world which is beyond death, about which you know nothing, and you can know nothing, about which you can do nothing. And the great advantage there is that nothing can be proved or disproved. You can say anything about the world to come. Who is there to question you? Is there anybody who can disprove what you are saying? But the simple fact is, about this I am convinced, whatever people say about the world to come, for example, in the Christian thinking, the various portrayal of heaven, what will be the conditions of life in heaven? When you go to heaven, what are the things you may expect to receive or find or enjoy, etc.? What will heaven be like? It is nothing but a function, a pure function of imagination. Heaven is a creation of human imagination, nothing else. About this, I am completely convinced. I am not saying that there is nothing after death, there is nothing called heaven and all that. What I am saying is, whatever we are told about heaven is nothing but the invention of human imagination, very much like whatever you see in the theater or in the cinema hall is the creation of human imagination. Therefore, I have to also say that there is an uncanny similarity between and a striking parallel between religion and theater, religion and cinema. Of course, there are many, many parallels to it. I'll give you only one illustration. You can develop further points of contact. The theater sets great importance by costume. You cannot have theatre without costumes. Various characters, actors become characters largely because of costumes. For example, if I have to act as King Lear or Hamlet or Macbeth or any Kalidasa, sorry, not Kalidasa, Dushyanta in Kalidasa, Shakuntala, any character, I have to have that costume. Without that, if I just go in my Kerala Munda or Kaili, people will jeer me out of the stage. Now, in the same manner, no priest can celebrate or conduct a worship or celebrate a sacrament without the costume. The costume of a priest is far more important than his personality, exactly as it is in the theatre, exactly as it is in the cinema. This is why all historians of literature, at least English literature, the history of English literature that I am familiar with, develops a parallel between religion and theatre. Actually, the origin of English drama is in religion, in what's called liturgical plays. Plays which were written, or dramas written to be performed in churches as part of Sunday worship. In those days, there were no sermons. So various episodes from the Bible were dramatized and presented to the people so that they could come to their understanding about what these various episodes were. They are called liturgical plays. Liturgy is the mode of worship or the order of worship. Liturgical drama, liturgical plays. So it's very interesting to connect all of this together, link it to the revelation, very significant revelation in the very first book of the Bible, that's chapter 2, verse 7, that God created Adam out of the dust of the earth, and at that time he was not a living being. Then God breathed into him and he became a living soul. My argument is that but for this unique creation, there would have been neither any art, nor any science, nor any religion. Religion religion is a result of this peculiar, unique creation of human beings. Obviously, if we were created merely like other animals, we would have not experienced the need to have a religion. So, what are the various ways in which this spiritual biblical insight can be applied to our life? How does it connect to the kind of religiosity that we practice? What kind of perspective it affords to us on our condition, our human condition upon planet Earth, and our individual predicament? How much of what we are given as religion, the paraphernalia of religion, is merely theatrical? How much of that is really divine? What is revelation and what is fake revelation? Who is a prophet, who is a false prophet? What is bhakti and what is mere hypocrisy? What is true devotion and what is mere hypocrisy? The main application of this insight, therefore, is to me that it underlines, it emphasizes the duty that each one of us has to be alert to all the pretensions and projections that are before us. The religious tradition to which we belong is a projection. It is created by human beings. Its origin must have been in revelation, but revelation is entrusted to human beings, and therefore it comes filtered through the medium of human beings, and therefore all the limitations of human beings are superimposed on the substance of that revelation, and it is this modified substance of revelation which is then projected by human beings in the form of religion, and then thereafter it undergoes a series of projections as each generation gives way to another. Therefore, you find when you look into the history of religions, the same religion, you will find various stages through which a religious tradition develops. And unfortunately, one particular generation sees only that particular phase of the evolution of a religion. They think that religion began like this, and therefore they think that their religion started off by being perfect, like an infant who was born 20 years old. If you can think of an infant who at the time of birth is 20 years old, you can also imagine a religion that was born fully perfectly developed. Even now our religions are not perfect. They're laden with imperfections. But since we don't have the critical apparatus to understand our religions in a critical light, we think that our religions are in a perfect state. Our understanding of God and heaven and hell and spiritual possibilities and all the rest of it is so perfect that anyone who deviates from what we are saying is either a rebel or a dangerous character or downright stupid. Everybody has to believe what we believe, everybody has to say what we say, everybody has to worship exactly the way we worship. This kind of stupidity will be seen for what it is if the meaning of this revelation, which is present in the Bible right at the beginning, is understood. That's my contention. So I submit this to your consideration. I'm sorry that this reflection has already taken a little long and I didn't realize it. So I'll now conclude abruptly. So please give a thought to this very significant revelation, which is right at the beginning of the Bible. It's meant to guide the entire tradition of religion and the human predicament upon planet Earth and everything that is an offshoot of that predicament, which includes religion, which includes art, which includes science, and all the rest of it. Thank you for your patient attention.